we need to come together and talk for a minute. I've put your tests up right here for the dates and when you need to have them done. The test for 9 is open and it closes on the 28th. The next test is open on April 11th and closes on the 17th, which is the day I come back, hopefully. Okay, so you need to make sure you keep track of this. I will be updating you through Canvas if there's anything that you need to know or you need to submit something to me online. That's where you're going to be doing it. Okay? You can email me. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what I'm going to be like after surgery, how long it's going to take me to email you back kind of thing. So you can try. You can try. Lab committee, you do need to have a lab committee this term coming up that is required, and then I'll do the extra credit things like I did last time. Friday morning, that's tomorrow, and Friday after school, and then Monday morning because Monday after school, not Monday morning, because we're going to be doing a cloud chamber lab on Monday, so I need to take this lab down, get the other lab up, and then take the other lab down before I go. Okay, so just heads up on that. Today is the last day. We are going to do the buffer lab. There are some changes on the buffer lab. We're going to go over those. There is another one. How many had signed up for 1120 in here? Okay, there's a couple. They've canceled it. Weber State is no longer offering CE 1120. They're only offering it online. The reason why they decided to do that is because it's not part of their nursing program anymore, but it's part of everybody else's in the state's nursing program. So, if you are anymore, right, for Weber States, if you get into Weber States, but anywhere else it is. No, the scholarship, if you do 12 credit hours of CE credit, it doesn't have to be from Weber State. Weber State for the first year will give you $1,000 a semester scholarship just for having 12 credit hours of CE. Five. You have to go through how many classes you've taken CE and figure out how much each one was. This one was worth 5. I don't. Yes. Not like with the presidential. If you have scholarships that are not associated with Weber State, that are, like American Chemical Society or, then they can be, but they can't be stacked within Weber State. Does that make sense? Okay. Couple other things I was going to tell you is 1120 basically was the first semester was organic. We're going to hit 2 organic chapters in this class before we end, so you can sort of get a flavor for that. And the last half was biochemistry, which is really a lot of nursing stuff, which blows my mind that they're now not using that because it's all about how chemistry works in the body and how different drugs and stuff work in the body. And like we did a lab on water fleas and how nicotine and caffeine and aspirin affected the water fleas. So it was all about how things affect the body and body function stuff. So I'm going to be having Mrs. Bagley come in for a minute. She's going to give you an option with her. She does biotechnology, and they actually do biochemistry as part of biotechnology. The first term is chemistry, so it would just be a review of what you did this year, be easy A. And then the next term is microbiology, where they do gram stain and stuff like that. And then the last 2 terms are biotechnology, which is biochemistry. And in fact, almost all of the state schools will count that as credit. But even if they don't, towards nursing, and you have to take 1120, that would give you a heads up for 1120, so you would be above everybody else when you had to take it. The other option we're looking at that doesn't, you can also take medical forensics, which also involves biology, chemistry, and physics. And doing stuff like that. They haven't got that one CE yet, so that's not college credit where biotech is. The other option we're looking at is possibly offering just a year organic biochem class where you don't get college credit, but you go through the curriculum so that you could, if you wanted to, sign up for the Weber State class and still go through this one here face-to-face and still be able to get the credit. Yes? I've tried for 2 months to try and get another college to take it, and nobody else will. SLIC was our best option, but they're far enough away they don't want to deal with us. So, and USU doesn't want to deal with us because we're not in their bowl of feeders. So I've tried everything I possibly can to get you that class. That's why I waited this long to tell you, because the last straw was finally SLIC finally coming back and saying no. So, but there is that option that we could possibly open that up if you're interested in that. The other option is you could take biotech, and we're thinking about also offering just a half a year organic, so you just get a flavor of organic and see what it's like. Yes? It is all online. Basically, you don't have a teacher over you. Well, you have a teacher over you, but you don't have one-on-one experience. You go through everything online, including labs, including everything. My daughter took 1110 online through Weber, and it was the worst nightmare I've ever had. And I sat there with her and went through it. And I have a master's in chemistry, and I struggled. So I would not recommend the online class. If we do the class here where it follows the biochem and the organic biochem, but you don't get credit, then I would say, okay, sign up for it, but sign up for the spring quarter of 1120. So then you can take, do it that way. I don't know. That's the options that we're looking at for you. If you had already signed up for 1120, you probably need to talk to Mrs. Davidson in CE or Mrs. Wooten, or talk to the head counselor. I can't think of her name. What is her name? Because she knows what's going on. Mrs. Johansson. Okay? Any questions with that? Mrs. Bagley will come over and tell you a little bit about what they do. They do a lot of cool stuff in biochem, and you can use that to get a lab tech. You actually have a certificate when you finish that class that you can actually take with you to industry, which is cool. All right, so we're going to go really quick and just do a review real fast on some things and give you a little heads up. I would grab out a piece of paper because this is not part of your notes, but it's a little add-on to your notes. Some things that you probably need to look at before you take the test if you haven't taken it already. The test is open. It is open till next Wednesday. So make sure you know what acids and bases are. For Arrhenius, for Bronsted-Lowry, for Lewis. Same thing for bases. Know what they are: slippery, bitter, sour, anything like that. What those equations were for the acids with a metal. Okay? One of the equations we used was M1V1 equals M2V2. You can also use this equation down at the bottom if you have a balanced equation. Now, these number of hydrogens equal number of hydroxides, that is the coefficients on your balanced equation. It's not how many are in the compound itself, but it's the coefficients in your balanced equation. And I'm going to show you on the next slide how to work through a problem that has not a one-to-one relationship with an acid base. Remember I told you the MAVA, MBVB you could use if it was a one-to-one. The others you have to do Stoke. This sort of shortcuts the Stoke, okay, which is nice. Okay, this will come up later if you don't get this down, this bottom one down. It will come up later in the thing, and I'll write it on the next page. Okay, so here is an example of when we would use this. When we don't have a one-to-one relationship. Here we have a 1-to-2 relationship. Okay? So the first thing we need to do, other than just remember what the equation was, which is the number of hydrogens times the molarity of the acid times the volume of the acid, equals the number of OH minuses times the molarity of the base times the volume of the base. Okay, is to pull out from the story problem what we have. I know this is my acid, so I'm going to need molarity of the acid. I know I'm going to need volume of the acid. This is my base, so I know I'm going to need molarity of the base and volume of the base. I always like to write a balanced equation really quickly at the first to help me, but you can shortcut that. If you look at the acid and the base, the acid has 2 hydrogen, the base has 1 OH. So I'm going to need twice as much base to balance out because they have to have the same number of H and OHs. Okay, so you can shortcut it. So as we go along here, what is a molarity of? So this is my question mark. If 43.5 milliliters of 0.32 molar NaOH, those are my bases. So volume is 43.35 milliliters. My molarity, 0.32 molar. We're needed to neutralize 25.9 milliliters of acid. So now I'm just going to plug in what I've got. The number of hydrogens, the coefficient is 1, so I'm going to put 1 in there. I'm just going to put it so you know where it came from. Molarity, we don't know. Molarity of the acid is unknown. Volume of the acid, 25.9 milliliters equals number of OHs. That's the coefficient in front of NaOH, which is 2. Molarity of the base, 0.32 molar. Volume of the base, 43.35 milliliters. So I can basically ignore the 1, right, because 1 times anything is it. And I'm just going to divide both sides by this volume, 25.9 milliliters. When I do that, it goes away from over here, and over here, just my milliliters cancel. So then I can just quickly plug it into my calculator, and I've got the molarity of the acid, which is equal to what? If you don't have a calculator out, you're going to need one today. You can come get one out of the box. Throw it through. Let's do it to 3 sig figs. It's the average of all we've got up there. .07, that's great. Okay, so we got the answer and we're done and we move on. Okay? So that's one way you can do it. You can still do it the other way where you would times the molarity times volume, get the moles. Then you're going from moles to this, you times by 2. Then you take this and you'd have to change that to liters. So this is just another way to do it. I thought I'd show you before the test. Okay, now, and I forgot I had that on there. I want you to try it on your own. So I've given you a problem here. I want you to try it on your own. And then on number 2, who remembers what amphoteric means? This is something you're going to need for the test. Amphoteric means that it can act as an acid or a base. So if a substance can act as an acid or a base, depending on who it's with, it's amphoteric. And then we're doing a lab about buffers, so the last one is about buffers. So really quickly write those problems down real fast and we'll talk about them. Yes? Yes, water would be amphoteric. That's the most famous one. Yes? Okay, I'll give you about another minute to finish number 1 and then we'll put the answers up real fast. Huh? Okay, let's see how you did. Maybe. How many got that answer? Remember, you needed to balance the equation. Hydrochloric acid is HCl, and barium hydroxide is OH2, so you need twice as much HCl to balance out the OH2. Okay, we talked about the amphoteric. Water is the most famous one. The others are di or triprotic or polyprotic acids that have already lost one hydrogen. So they can still gain a hydrogen back or they can lose a hydrogen. So they've got to have the ability to lose a hydrogen or gain a hydrogen. So most of the others will have a charge, as you can see up here. Those are amphoteric. Okay? And then what makes a buffer is what we're going to be using today, a weak acid or a base, and it's salt. Okay, and there's a couple other things that we need to talk about before we go into the lab. There are some things that you need to make sure you're looking at. Come on in.
Okay, this time, because they're doing a lab.
Let's keep going on here real quick. A couple things that we need to make sure you look at, if not, at least listen to me for, is there's a couple of things that she likes you to know for the test, okay? Like, why is carbon dioxide a concern? This is in your book on page 301. It would be a good thing to go and read. There's 3 articles you really need to read from your book. This is one of them. But basically what happens is when carbon dioxide is overproduced, it gets into our oceans and it produces bicarbonate ions. And those bicarbonate ions react with carbonate to make more bicarbonate ions. And what that bicarbonate ion does is it pulls from the reefs the calcium that makes the reefs grow. And so it makes the reefs dissolve, and we lose the reef system. So we have a hard time there because what's going on is we're coming back up instead of staying down where it should be. The other one that you need to look at is on page 306 in your book. This one is, do you have acid reflux disease? And this is a big thing lately. The stomach acid is not staying in the stomach, and there's a valve at the top of the stomach that if it gets damaged, stomach acid is allowed to come back up into the esophagus. And as it does, it actually burns the esophagus and starts eating it away. That is known as Barrett's disease. And Barrett's disease gets worse and worse to the point that they actually have holes in their esophagus. And they actually have to go in and shut down the esophagus to the stomach opening and then put in an opening directly into the stomach where they have to use a syringe to feed themselves with, which is not a good thing. So that heartburn, if you have it constantly, then you probably ought to go talk to somebody about that. So read that one. The last one is on page 315 in your book, and it does diet play a role in peptic ulcer disease. Now this is again with acids in our stomach because we're supposed to be doing more medical stuff. If we have a sore that develops in the stomach, that's called a peptic ulcer. And what happens is we have a mucosa that is the sore gets into. Well, when we have an ulcer, it is basically like a little socket that now holds that acid next to membranes that weren't made to repel that acid. And so it starts eating and eating and eating more and more and gets bigger and bigger. So the problem is they have to actually go and coat that with some medicine so that it makes a coating so that this can heal. But in the process, you have to change how you eat. And you have to eat more alkaline foods to help neutralize the acid in your stomach so that it doesn't eat away the medicine that's there to help to heal. So, but make sure you read that and go over that. So that's what that is. You got the test that's available until the 28th. You need to make sure you do that. I will not be here to pound your head and say, get it done, get it done, get it done. The next 2 tests are on you. You've got to figure it out and get it done. Make sure you're looking at Canvas. So let's go quick here. We are going to do a couple changes to the lab to make it go a little bit smoother. The first one is we are only going to use 2 milliliters of the buffer, not 5. So we're changing that. We are going to break down into groups. We're going to have 2 groups in this class. And each of you are going to test a buffer for either acid or base. And you're going to do specific things with that. Now, The ones that do base are going to see what we've been seeing like this. Okay? And you're going to use phenolphthalein. The ones that are testing acid, you're going to start here and you're going to go down. Well, phenolphthalein won't work for that because we're going to start with a pH about 4 and we're going to go down. And phenolphthalein changes at a pH of 8. So you're going to have to use a different indicator. The buffers are at the south end, and in between buffer A and B, there are 2 indicators that you could choose. Doesn't matter which one you choose, but choose one of those because they will change in that pH range. So when you do your quick dump titration, the first one, you'll want to go and use that so you can see where about you need to slow down. Okay? Now, here's the warning if you get the acid. Some kids aren't slowing down enough at the very first. They're not going slow enough, and they end up getting something like this. And it's really hard to get the point of inflection. Bringing up another point. We are not getting exactly pH of 7 this time because of the way the buffers work, we're going to be a little bit higher or lower. What we're looking for is a point of inflection. Does anybody know what the point of inflection is from math? Good. So it's the point at which the concavity changes. So this one's going like this, and then about here it changes and goes that way. So on this one, we're going to be going from this way to this way, so we're looking for this point. We're still going to use interpolate. We're still going to want to have that number. Okay? But now you are going to be responsible, you and your partner are going to be responsible for 1 or 2 graphs because we don't have a full set. One of you is going to be doing 2 of them. You're going to print 8 graphs total, or however many is in your group. Because I don't want to use 8 pieces of paper, I want to use as small amount as possible. How many of you used Snippet before? Okay, if you haven't used Snippet, all you have to do is press right here and then type S. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. No, that's spring. Thought it was up. So I just type S on the computer keyboard and it comes up with a snipping tool. And you just click it. So after I've made my graph, I'm going to click that and it's going to come up with this. I want to move this up in the corner just like it is for mine right now because I want to, remember we have to come up off that graph and then we can't go back on the graph. So I want it up off the graph and then I just take and say, okay, I want a new snippet and I snip whatever I want to snip. And it gives me a picture of it. Okay? Then if I right click on the graph right here, it'll say copy and I can copy it. Then all I have to do is bring up a Word document and just get a blank one here. If I do Control V, it will paste it. And I can paste 2 or 3 to a page and then I can just copy that page, print that page 2 or 3 times. Okay, does that make sense? So then we can cut those and you just use less paper. Okay? Next year, they're actually going to have to upload their images to Canvas using this, put it in a Word document, do a formal lab write-up. Which, you know, rather than have paper, it's done when you're done. So, good and bad. All right, any questions with this? Okay, so I'm going to give you your assignment right now. We're going to break you into 2 groups, and I was trying to see how it would work best in here. So what I think I'm going to do is, Lexi, I'm going to have you be with this group right here on this side. Okay? I'm going to have this side do all 4, and this side do all 4. Now, when I'm going to correlate you as far as table, because these guys are going to have an odd number, and these guys are going to have an odd number. But you're going to have to do 4 groups. So the group that has 3 in them is going to have to do 2 graphs. That way you can have one person setting it up and doing a quick one on each one, and then when you get to the graph part, you can have somebody helping you. Does that make sense? So I'm going to have, Lexi, I'm going to have you pair with these 2 right here. These 2, yeah. Okay, so this is how it's going to go. Front row. Front row. You are in charge of buffer A base. Buffer A base. Write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. So when we're back in the back, you are going to compare each other's data. And what's going to happen? You're not, front row, buffer A base. Second row, which is you, Lexi, is going to be buffer A acid. Buffer A acid. Third row, buffer B base. Buffer B base. Fourth row, buffer B acid. Okay, now when we go back there, the burettes are marked. The red is for the acid. The blue is for the base. So if you have acid, make sure you get a station that has a red burette. Okay, and you're putting acid in there, because I had some last period that didn't realize they were putting acid in their burette. They put base in there. So if you're doing acid, you put acid in the burette. If you're putting base, you use the blue one and you put base in it. They're around the tables. If you're using acid, some of them say they have a red thing that says unknown, but I put a 0.1 molar HCl because that was what your unknown was. So that's what you're using. Make sure you get the right buffer. Okay, when you're all done, come back, print it. You'll need 9 copies. So if you took 2 to a page, just do 5 copies. Okay, and then you can cut it. Questions? Oh, 7, sorry, 8. Yeah, 8 total is what you need, sorry. How much buffer you're getting. How much buffer. And acid, remember, you cannot use phenolphthalein. You've got to use one of the 2 indicators I've got on the cart. Do not move them off the cart. When you go, that's the other thing. When you go get your buffer, take your Erlenmeyer flask, that's the one that looks like that, and your big beaker, and get them both filled at the same time so you're ready to roll. Okay? 2 milliliters, and if you're the acid, you do the 2 milliliters and 2 drops of one of the indicators in each one. Okay? Ready, set, go.